Labeling the protagonist Kiyotaka Ayanokoji as a sociopath or a psychopath is a fundamental clinical misreading of his character. Analyzing antisocial personality disorder requirements against Ayanokoji's behavior highlights a total lack of childhood delinquency or predatory drive. His backstory contradicts these diagnoses. He was raised in a hyper-controlled experimental vacuum, completely isolated from normal society. He lacks the predatory drive of a psychopath. When left to his own devices, he defaults to passive isolation, only orchestrating harm as a targeted response to a specific external challenge. The true etiology of his behavior is extreme neuroplasticity, a biological adaptation to the hyper-meritocratic experiment known as the White Room. Ayanokoji is not anti-society. He is a perfectly adapted survival mechanism whose emotional circuitry was systematically overwritten to prioritize absolute autonomy. To understand his actions, we have to stop analyzing him as a human teenager and start analyzing him as a highly engineered operating system. The White Room's foundational axiom is that normal cognitive development and emotional vulnerability are inefficiencies that lead to failure. The institution's methodology relied on continuous, compounding intellectual and physical pressure designed to bypass natural human limitations. Our trajectory will be to analyze his hardware, deconstruct his social interface, and locate his ultimate systemic vulnerability. His advanced physical and intellectual capabilities are directly tethered to a highly arrested interpersonal ego integration. His intellect is not a natural gift, but a survival adaptation engineered by an environment that punished every error with immediate removal. His hardware, the physiological and affective baseline, was engineered into a blank slate. Clinical records show a fearless biology. During both physical violence and direct praise from his father, his heartbeat remains unchanged, indicating a total lack of a typical excitement or fear response. In psychology, learned helplessness occurs when a subject is repeatedly placed in situations where effort changes nothing, eventually leading to a mental collapse. Gifted students in the White Room frequently reach this point, breaking down into inferiority complexes or emotional instability under the weight of constant mandatory failure. Ayanokoji's brain adapted differently. Instead of collapsing under the pressure, it simply removed the emotional resistance to failure entirely. He perceives failure strictly as a prompt for optimal adjustment, rather than a threat to his self-worth. Removing this resistance required the total suppression of a fundamental sense of self and ego. His lack of emotion is not a defense mechanism, it is his factory setting, permanently overwritten because emotional vulnerability was synonymous with death. To function outside the White Room at the Advanced Nurturing High School, Ayanokoji requires a sophisticated camouflage mechanism. His persona as an average student is a social software, an interface fabricated to minimize friction by providing a neutral, predictable output. Standard social subroutines like loyalty or empathy are completely unintelligible to his hardware. He operates on a philosophy of predictability, understanding that emotions make other humans controllable because they create exploitable patterns. He denies others those same patterns by practicing absolute unreadability, staying silent and projecting averageness to hide his intentions. This creates observational neutrality. He can observe the trauma of others with total analytical detachment. When he watches someone suffer, he is merely cataloging pressure points and evaluating their residual utility within his strategic framework. He perfectly imitates human behavior to extract valuable data, without ever incurring the risk of a genuine emotional connection. Ayanokoji integrates people into his ecosystem by categorizing them strictly by their instrumental utility. His relationships are a transactional economy. Every favor he grants is designed to place the recipient in psychological debt, while he remains entirely unindebted. This equation models his behavior. Under high-threat conditions, his resource allocation scales exponentially toward tactical winning and exposure minimization. But in safety, his logic shifts. He reallocates those cognitive resources to pursue autotelic knowledge, learning for its own sake. This explains his most ruthless maneuvers. He pushes allies to the breaking point, specifically to observe how the human variable reacts under extreme pressure. For Ayanokoji, people are tools, but they are not disposable. They are variables to be sharpened and integrated into his equation of absolute control. The singular vulnerability in a system built on prediction is the emergence of a variable that cannot be calculated. This uncomputable variable is not an external threat, but a byproduct of his own insatiable curiosity about human growth. Ayanokoji is defined by a functional contradiction. He is a tool forged for victory, but he has been placed in an environment without a master or a war. This leads to his desire to be defeated. If he can nurture his peers to surpass him, he can scientifically disprove the deterministic methods of the White Room. This autotelic drive forces his subconscious to process data, like his bond with Horikita, that his conscious mind intercepts and rationalizes away as strategy. This intense intellectual curiosity is the only internal signal strong enough to actually disrupt his total emotional vacuum. However, his deep reliance on absolute control prevents him from ever experiencing the genuine human relationships he is so curious about. Until he can accept the vulnerability of unpredictable connection, his strict conditioning remains his primary constraint, an absolute autonomy that functions as a permanent isolation.